Hi everyone, welcome to my CISSP video series. In this video series, we will be diving deep into the CISSP exam preparation, breaking down the key concepts and providing in-depth explanations of the questions and answers. I am a cyber security professional having about 15 years of experience in the field. I have obtained over a dozen international certifications including the CISSP, CCSP and CISA. I am glad to share my knowledge and experience with you guys through these videos. In today's video, we will be tackling about 50 questions from Domain 6 of the CISSP exam, Security Assessment and Testing. So grab your notes and let's break down these questions to help you on your CISSP journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that notification bell for more contents like this. So let's get started. CISSP Domain 6 Security Assessment and Testing. Question number 1. What is the initial action that must take place prior to conducting a penetration test? And the options are option A, obtaining authorization, option B, information gathering, option C, scanning ports, and option D, strategy development. And the correct option is obtaining the authorization. Since penetration testing is a disruptive activity and it may disrupt the functioning and the services of the organization, therefore obtaining the authorization from the concerned organization and their leadership is initial and a primary important task. So the critical first step in any penetration test is securing proper authorization. After obtaining permission, the process can move forward with planning, information gathering, and then conducting actual testing activities such as port scanning. Question number 2. What type of code review process is generally not conducted by a human? And the options are option A, pair programming, option B, software inspection, option C, static program analysis, and option D, software walkthroughs. So one of these is not conducted by humans and the rest are conducted by humans. So the correct answer are the software testing technique, which is not done by humans and is done through automated tool, is option C, static program analysis. So the pair programming, software inspections and the software walkthrough are actually done by humans manually, while the static program analysis is done through automated tools. So automated tools usually carry out static program reviews. On the other hand, human-led methods like program understanding, comprehension, pair programming, software inspection, and software walkthroughs are commonly employed for code reviews. Question number 3. What key distinction exists between synthetic and passive monitoring? And the options are option A, synthetic monitoring works only after problems have occurred. Option B, passive monitoring cannot detect functionality issues. Option C, passive monitoring works only after problems have occurred. And option D, synthetic monitoring cannot detect functionality issues. And the correct options is that the passive monitoring works only after problems have occurred. So let's go to the explanation. So passive monitoring is only effective after problems have already happened because it relies on real traffic data. On the other hand, synthetic monitoring uses simulated or pre-recorded traffic, allowing to proactively identify potential issues. Both types of monitoring are capable of detecting functionality problems. Question number 4. Which of the following methods is not an effective approach for addressing a vulnerability found by a vulnerability scanner? And the options are option A, use an application layer firewall or IPS to prevent attacks against the identified vulnerability. Option B, install a patch. Option C, update the banner or version number. And option D, use a workaround fix. And the correct option is that updating the banner or version number is not an effective approach for addressing a vulnerability. So merely updating the version or banner shown by an application might prevent a vulnerability scanner from detecting the issue, but it does not resolve the root cause. Applying patches, implementing workaround, or using an application layer firewall or IPS are more effective strategies to mitigate or reduce the impact of the vulnerability. Let's move to question number 5. Chris is designing a testing process that ensures every line of code is executed during the test. What type of analysis is he performing? And the options are option A, branch coverage, option B, condition coverage, option C, function coverage, and option D, statement coverage. And the correct option is that during the statement coverage, every line of code is executed during the test. As the name indicates, that every statement or every line of code is covered during that type of test. So statement coverage ensures that every line of code is executed during the testing process. In contrast, branch coverage checks whether all branches of if statement are executed in both true and false conditions. Condition coverage examines if every logical condition in the code is tested across all input tests, while function coverage verifies that all functions in the code have been called and return results. Let's move to the next question. Question number 6. The automated code testing and integration that Andrea ran as part of her organization's CI/CD pipeline errored out. What actions should she take with the code if it needs to go live immediately? And the options are option A, manually bypass the test. Option B, review error logs to identify the problems. Option C, rerun the test to see if it works. And option D, send the code back to the developer for fix. And the correct option is option B, review error logs to identify the problems. So when managing errors and exceptions, the initial step should be to examine error logs and notification to determine the cause of the issue. After this analysis, Andrea can decide whether to remediate the problem, return the code for fixes, or take an alternative action. If the error arises after testing and pertains to the process flow or a non-critical component, she might choose to process with deployment, but only if she is completely confident that it won't affect the overall system's functionality. Question number 7. Which of the following methods is utilized to automatically create new software, test, and ensure their quality? And the options are option A, code auditing, option B, mutation testing, option C, static code analysis, and option D, regression testing. And the correct option is option B, mutation testing. So mutation testing involves making small modifications to a program and then testing these changes to see if the program behaves correctly or fails. This technique is specifically aimed at creating and evaluating software tests. In contrast, static code analysis and regression testing are methods of testing code while code auditing refers to the analysis of source code rather than the design and testing of software tests. Question number 8. What type of testing is conducted to verify that independently developed software modules can correctly share data? And the options are option A, fuzzing, option B, dynamic testing, option C, interface testing, and option D, API checksums. And the correct option is option C, interface testing. So interface testing ensures that software modules adhere to interface specifications, allowing for proper data exchange between them. Dynamic testing evaluates software in a running environment, while fuzzing is a specific dynamic testing approach that inputs invalid data to check how the software handles errors. API checksums do not serve as a testing technique. Question number 9. Daniel seeks to validate his compliance with PCI-DSS for his large organization, which handles millions in transactions annually. What is the most typical approach for conducting this type of testing in sizable organizations? And the options are option A, to conduct a third-party assessment using COBIT, option B, self-assessment, option C, to conduct a third-party assessment using a qualified security assessor, and option D, to partner with another company and trade assessments between the organizations. And the correct option is, let me underline the correct option. Option C, to conduct a third-party assessment using a qualified security assessor. Let me bring up the explanation. So large organizations typically engage qualified security assessors to carry out compliance evaluations. According to PCI DSS, third-party certification is mandated for these large entities, while smaller organizations have the option to self-certify. Question number 10. What passive monitoring technique captures all user interactions with an application or website to guarantee quality and performance? And options are option A, real user monitoring, option B, passive user monitoring, option C, synthetic user monitoring, and option D, client server testing. And the correct option is option A, real user monitoring. So the real user monitoring is a passive technique that logs user interactions with an application or system to verify performance and correct application behavior. Typically, RUM or real user monitoring is employed during a pre-deployment process utilizing the actual user interface. The other options are not recognized terms in the industry. For example, while synthetic monitoring employs simulated behavior, synthetic user monitoring is not a defined method. Similarly, passive user recording is not an established term, and client-server testing merely refers to a potential architecture. Question number 11. Which of the following is least likely to be a common issue that Frank's team might discover while testing a newly developed API for the company's application infrastructure? And the options are option A, lack of rate limiting, option B, object level authorization issues, option C, improper encryption, and option D, user authentication issues. And the correct option is option C, improper encryption. So APIs generally handle data transfer through HTTPS, so encryption is managed at the transport layer rather than by API itself. If Frank's team detects that TLS is not active, they will need to collaborate with the infrastructure or system administration team to ensure TLS is properly enabled rather than problems, authentication vulnerabilities, and missing or inadequate rate limiting. Question number 12. What type of testing is performed to confirm that independently developed software modules can successfully exchange data? And the options are option A, API checksum, option B, dynamic testing, option C, interface testing, and option D, fuzzing. And the correct option is option C, fuzzing. So interface testing ensures that software modules meet interface specification and can exchange data effectively. Dynamic testing examines software in a live environment, while fuzzing involves providing invalid inputs to test the system's error handling. API checksums are not a recognized testing method. Question number 13. Sarah's team performs regression testing on all patches they release. Which key performance metrics should they track to gauge the effectiveness of their testing? And the options are option A, measure of the rate of defect recurrence. Option B, time to remediate vulnerabilities. Option C, a measure of the specific coverage of their testing. And option D, a weighted risk trend. And the correct option is option A measure of the rate of the defect recurrence. So Sarah's team employs regression testing to ensure that issues do not reappear after patches are released. Therefore, monitoring the rate of defect recurrence is the most relevant metric for evaluating their testing effectiveness, while the time to remediate vulnerabilities is more applicable to the patching process itself, and a weighted risk trend tracks overall risk exposure. Neither directly measures the success of regression testing. Coverage metrics can help verify the extent of testing, but defect recurrence is a more direct indicator of regression test effectiveness. Question number 14. Morgan is setting up a vulnerability management system that relies on standard components to assess and score vulnerabilities. Which of the following is typically used to provide a severity rating for these vulnerabilities? And the options are option A, CPE, option B, CVSS, option C, OL, and option D, CCE. And the correct option is option B, CVSS. So CVSS, or the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, is utilized to assess and communicate the severity of security vulnerabilities. CCE, which stands for Common Configuration Enumeration, is a system for naming configuration related issues. CPE, or Common Platform Enumeration, provides names for operating systems, applications, and devices. OWL is a language designed for outlining security testing procedures. Question number 15. Alex aims to utilize an automated tool to populate web application forms to identify format string vulnerabilities. Which type of tool would be most suitable for this purpose? And the options are option A, static analysis tool, option B, a black box, option C, a fuzzer, and option D, a brute force tool. And the correct option is option C, a brute force tool. So fuzzers are specialized tools that send invalid or unexpected input to applications, effectively testing for vulnerabilities such as format string vulnerabilities, buffer overflow issues, and more. In contrast, static analysis involves reviewing code without executing it, meaning it would not be capable of filling out web forms. Brute force tools work by attempting every possible combination to crack passwords or values, while black box testing refers to penetration testing where testers lack knowledge about the environment. Question number 16. What type of monitoring employs simulated traffic to a website in order to assess its performance? And the options are option A, passive monitoring, option B, synthetic monitoring, option C, log analysis, and option D, simulated transaction analysis. And the correct option is option B, synthetic monitoring. Synthetic monitoring employs simulated or recorded transactions to track performance variations in response time, functionality, or other performance metrics. In contrast, passive monitoring captures real-time traffic using methods like a span port. Log analysis generally focuses on actual log data, although it can also be applied to simulated traffic to identify issues. Simulated transaction analysis is not a recognized term in the industry. Question number 17. Which type of vulnerabilities are unlikely to be detected by a vulnerability scanner? And the options are option A, local vulnerabilities, option B, service vulnerabilities, option D, zero-day vulnerabilities, and option D, vulnerabilities that require authentication. And the correct option is option C, zero-day vulnerabilities, because these vulnerabilities have not been identified in advance and the vulnerability scanners have no knowledge of these zero-day vulnerabilities. So vulnerability scanners are limited in their ability to identify vulnerabilities that lack specific test plugins or signatures. They typically detect local vulnerabilities and can identify those requiring authentication if credentials are provided. They are also capable of identifying service vulnerabilities. However, zero-day vulnerabilities are particularly challenging to find because they are unknown and have no existing signatures in the scanner's database. Question number 18. Which of the following is not a risk linked to penetration testing? And the options are option A, data corruption, option B, application crashes, option C, denial of service, and option D, blackouts. And the correct option is blackouts. So during penetration testing, all these can occur. The data can corrupt, application can crash, and the services can become unavailable, while the blackout is unrelated terms which refers to basically lights out or the power outages. So this does not occur during penetration testing. Penetration tests usually do not lead to blackouts. However, they can result in application crashes, denial of service incidents due to failure in systems, networks or applications, and even data corruption. Question number 19. What advantage does the use of distinct user IDs for every user offer when analyzing logs? And the options are option A, confidentiality, option B, integrity, option C, availability, and option D, accountability. And this is a very straightforward question and straightforward answer, and it is accountability. So using distinct user IDs enhances accountability when combined with auditable logs, ensuring that actions can be traced back to specific users. While confidentiality, availability, and integrity are important, they are typically achieved through different methods such as encryption, systems design, and digital signatures. Question number 20. During a port scan with Nmap, Alex discovers that a system displays two open ports that raise immediate concerns. And these open ports are 21 and 23. Which services are likely operating on these ports? And the options are option A, SSH and FTP, option B, FTP and Telnet, option C, SMTP and Telnet, and option D, POP3 and SMTP. And the correct option is that FTP and Telnet. So FTP run basically on port 21 and Telnet run on port 23. While SSH, it uses port 22 and SMTP uses port 25. POP3, I think, uses port 110. So Alex might be alarmed to find FTP TCP port 21 and Telnet TCP port 23 active on the network, as both services are unencrypted and have largely been replaced by more secure alternatives like SSH, SCP, or SFTP. So SSH is the secure replacement of Telnet, and SCP or SFTP is the secure replacement of FTP. Notably, SSH operates on port 22 while SMTP runs on port 25 and POP3 on port 110. Question number 21. What kind of vulnerability scan retrieves configuration details from the system it targets along with data accessible through network services? And the options are option A, web application scans, option B, authenticated scans, option C, port scans, and option D, unauthenticated scans. And the correct option is option B, authenticated scans. So authenticated scans utilize a read-only account to obtain configuration files, enabling more precise vulnerability testing. In contrast, web application scans, unauthenticated scans, and port scans lack access to configuration files unless those files are mistakenly exposed. Question number 22. Paul is reviewing the approval process for a penetration test and wants to ensure that it has appropriate management review. Who should he ensure has approved the request for a penetration test for a business system? And the options are option A, the change advisory board, option B, senior management, option C, the system administrator for the system, and option D, the service owner. And the correct option is that the senior management should review or approve the penetration test activity. So in most organizations, it is essential for senior management to approve penetration tests due to the associated risk and potential impacts. While in some smaller organizations, the service owner might have the authority to make this decision, penetration tests typically affect more than just one service, making senior management the appropriate authority for approval. Change advisory boards usually handle changes rather than penetration tests, and system administrators are often informed about the test but generally lack the authority to authorize it. Question number 23. Emma wants to evaluate how a web browser processes unexpected data with an automated tool. Which tool would be the most suitable choice for her? The options are option A, Nmap, option B, ZZUF, option C, Nessus, and option D, Nikto. And the correct option is option B, ZZUF or ZZUF. So the only fuzzer among the options is ZZUF, which is specifically designed to test how applications like web browsers handle unexpected or malformed input by altering network and file inputs. In contrast, Nmap is primarily a port scanner Nessus serves as a vulnerability scanner, and Nikto is used for scanning web servers. Question number 24. In response to a request for proposal, MR receives an SSAE 18 SOC report. What should she request for further details about operating effectiveness and why? And the options are option A SOC 2 type 2 report because type 1 does not cover operating effectiveness. Option B SOC 1 type 1 report because SOC 2 does not cover operating effectiveness. Option C SOC 2 type 1 report because SOC 2 type 2 does not cover operating effectiveness. And option D SOC 3 report because SOC 1 and SOC 2 reports are outdated. And the correct option is option A SOC 2 type 2 report because type 1 does not cover operating effectiveness. So the essential factor in correctly answering this question lies in recognizing the distinction between SOC 1 and SOC 2 reports as well as between type 1 and type 2 reports. SOC 1 reports are focused on financial reporting, while SOC 2 reports assess security. Type 1 audits evaluate controls at a single point in time based on management's descriptions, lacking an assessment of operating effectiveness. In contrast, Type 2 audits span a designated period and include an evaluation of operating effectiveness. Question number 25. Derek wants to make sure his organization monitors every change made to accounts throughout their life cycle. What tool should he choose for this purpose? And the options are option A, an EDR system, option B, an IAM system, option C, an SIEMD, and option D, a directory service like LDAP. And the correct option is an IAM, that is Identity and Access Management System. So Identity and Access Management System integrate tools for managing account lifecycle and monitoring identity and authorization process across the organization. Derek should invest in an IAM system and ensure it's configured with suitable workflows to provide necessary logs and reports. EDR systems, on the other hand, are designed for endpoint detection and response primarily focusing on defending against sophisticated attacks. Question number 26. Alan's organization leverages the Security Content Automation Protocol to streamline its vulnerability management process. With SCAP, that is Security Content Automation Protocol component, would help Alan reconcile the identities of vulnerabilities produced by various security assessment tools. And the options are option A, SCE, option B, CVE, option C, XCCDF, and option D, OVAL. And the correct option is option B, CVE, the common vulnerability and exposure. So the explanation is that the common vulnerabilities and exposure system offers a standardized way to reference and identify security vulnerabilities across different tools. OVAL, in contrast, defines the state of a system in terms of its security posture. XCCDF helps structure security checklists in a unified format. Meanwhile, SCE allows for the use of scripts that are compatible with security policy standards. Question number 27. If Sarah's main priority is stopping administrative access to the server, which port should she block? And the options are option A 443, option B 1433, option C 22, and option D 80. So the port 443 is basically HTTPS and this is for web services. This is not typically used for administration. 1433, I don't know, this is I think a made up port. No specific service run on this port as per my knowledge. 22 is for SSH, and this is mainly used for the administration, while the port 80 is HTTP, that is no longer used. The secure version of HTTPS is used for web services. So the answer is port number 22. Port 22 is utilized by a secure shell, that is SSH protocol, for administrative access. Therefore, if Sarah aims to limit administrative connections, she should block this port. Question number 28. Eva has been tasked with evaluating a breach and attack simulation system. Which type of system should she seek out? Breach and attack simulation system, and the options are: option A, a security operation and response, that is source system; option B, a system that combines red and blue team techniques with automation; option C, a system that runs incident response simulations for blue teams to test their skills; and option D, a ticket and change management system designed to help manage incidents. And the correct option is option B, a system that combines red and blue teams techniques with automation. So breach and attack simulation systems integrate techniques from both red teams offensive and blue teams defensive, along with automation, to mimic advanced persistent threats and other sophisticated attacks in a given environment. This approach enables the replication and evaluation of various threats without the resource demands typically associated with a fully staffed purple team. Question number 29. While conducting a penetration test, Emma needs to determine which services are open on the systems but lacks enough access to create raw packets. What type of scan should she perform to confirm the most open services? And the options are: option A, TCP SYN scan; option B, TCP Connect scan; option C, a UDP scan; and option D, an ICMP scan. And the correct option is option B, a TCP Connect scan. So explanation is: when a tester lacks the ability to create raw packets, like when they haven't escalated privileges on a compromised system, using a TCP Connect scan is the best option. TCP SYN scans typically require elevated privileges on most Linux systems because they involve sending raw packets. The UDP scan may overlook many services that operate over TCP, while an ICMP scan only performs a ping sweep and does not identify specific services. Question number 30. John is collaborating with a contractor for penetration testing who suggests utilizing Metasploit in her efforts. What outcomes should John anticipate from the use of Metasploit? And the options are: option A, the system will be scanned for vulnerabilities; option B, system will have known vulnerabilities exploited; and option C, services will be probed for buffer overflow and other unknown flaws; and option D, system will be tested for zero-day exploits. So Metasploit is basically a hacking and exploitation tools. So using Metasploit, what should John expect? And the correct answer is that system will have known vulnerabilities exploited. So this is not only a scanning tool, it also exploits the vulnerabilities. So Metasploit is an exploitation framework specifically designed to aid penetration testers When utilizing Metasploit, a tester can exploit known vulnerabilities for which exploits already exist or create their own. Although it offers some built-in vulnerability scanning features, the primary expectation is to conduct tests on exploitable vulnerabilities. Additionally, while Metasploit can facilitate the creation of buffer overflow attacks, it is not solely intended for that purpose, and testing for zero-day exploits is impractical unless those exploits have been made public. Question number 31. Mark's company has been alerted to a flaw in their web application by an anonymous individual who has given them a 2-week deadline to fix the issue before disclosing the details and exploit code. What industry standard is this individual violating? The options are option A, ethical hacking, option B, zero-day reporting, option C, the ISC2 vulnerability disclosure ethics statement, and option D, ethical disclosure. And the correct option is option B, ethical disclosure. So the practices of ethical or responsible disclosure typically allow companies a fair amount of time to address vulnerabilities before publicizing them. A 2-week time frame is generally insufficient for organizations to implement a fix and distribute it to their customers. Unfortunately, Mark may find it challenging to convince the individual to reconsider, leaving his company to decide on the best course of action regarding the flaw. Question number 32. During an examination of access logs, Sam observed that Emma consistently logs into her workstation in New York at 8 a.m. each day. But she also appears to log into her department's primary web application shortly after 3 a.m. daily. What typical logging problem has Sam likely identified? And the options are option A, inconsistent timestamps, option B, inconsistent log formatting, option C, modified logs, and option D, multiple log sources. And the correct option is inconsistent timestamps. So inconsistent timestamps represent a frequent issue typically arising from incorrectly configured time zones or variations in system clock settings. Here, a regular time difference suggests that one system might be using local time while another relies on Greenwich Mean Time. Using logs for multiple sources can complicate centralization and data collection, while varying log formats can hinder effective log data parsing. Additionally, modified logs often indicate potential intrusions or malicious activity. Question number 33. Which of the following is not commonly tested during the software testing process? And the options are option A, UIs, that is user interfaces, option B, physical interfaces, option C, APIs, and option D, network interfaces. And the correct option is the network interfaces are not tested during the software testing process. It is because the APIs, user interfaces, and physical interfaces are all critical components that require testing during software testing process. However, network interfaces are generally not included in the standard set of interfaces that are tested. Question number 34. Which of the following tools is unable to determine the operating system of a target for a penetration tester? And the options are option A, Nmap, option B, Nessus, option C, Nikto, and option D, SQL Map. And the correct option is the SQL Map will be unable to determine the operating system of a target host for the penetration tester, while the Nmap, Nessus, and Nikto possess capability for OS fingerprinting or identifying the operating system. In contrast, SQL Map focuses on automated detection and testing for SQL injection vulnerabilities, lacking features for OS detection. Question number 35. David is assessing the disaster recovery process data for his organization and observes that the maximum tolerable downtime for the main website is set at 2 hours. What can he conclude about the recovery time objective RTO for the site during his testing and validation? And the options are option A, the RTO needs to be less than 2 hours. Option B, the RTO needs to be at least 2 hours. Option C, the MTD is too short and needs to be longer. And the option D, the RTO is too short and needs to be longer. And the correct option is option A, that the RTO needs to be less than 2 hours. Remember, the RTO should always be less than MTD, because MTD is the maximum tolerable downtime and you need to recover the system before MTD. That's why RTO should be less than MTD. If MTD is 2 hours, you need an RTO of less than 2 hours, such as 1 hour. The explanation is that when David examines the recovery time objective data, he must confirm that the organization can restore operation from an outage within 2 hours, aligning with the maximum tolerable downtime of 2 hours. Question number 36. Jim is tasked with designing his organization's log management systems and must consider various factors related to handling log data. Which of the following is not a concern he should focus on? And the options are option A, network bandwidth, option B, the volume of log data, option C, a lack of sufficient log sources, and option D, data storage security requirements. And the correct option is option C, a lack of sufficient log sources. So the absence of sufficient log sources is not typically a primary concern in the design of log management systems, although security managers might find it problematic if they cannot capture necessary data. When designing log management systems, it's crucial to consider factors such as the volume of log data generated, the network bandwidth it utilizes, data storage security requirements, and the effort needed for data analysis. Question number 37. Mia is interested in collecting data on her organization's security awareness. Which of the following methods is the most commonly employed to evaluate security awareness? Options are option A, surveys, option B, phishing simulators, option C, assessment tests, and option D, gamified applications. And the correct option is option A, surveys. So surveys are the most common method used by organizations to evaluate overall security awareness due to their convenience and widespread availability. While phishing simulators are also popular, they focus solely on phishing related knowledge rather than general security awareness. Gamified applications are gaining popularity but are not yet as widely adopted as surveys. Assessment tests are primarily utilized for compliance and certification purposes, making them less common than surveys for general awareness assessment. Question number 38. When a Windows machine restarts, what kind of log entry is created? Options are option A, information, option B, failure audit, option C, error, and option D, warning. And the correct option is option A, information. So restarting a Windows system produces an information log entry. Windows categorizes events into 5 types: errors, which signals critical issues; warnings, which suggest potential future problems; information, which reflects successful operation; success audit, which documents successful security accesses, and failure audits, which capture failed security access attempts. Question number 39. Emily has created a script that sends transactions simulating typical user behavior to a web application. What kind of transaction is she using and what type of test does this represent? Option A, actual dynamic monitoring. Option B, actual fuzzing. Option C, synthetic use case testing. And option D, synthetic passive monitoring. And the correct option is option C, synthetic and use case testing. Emily employs synthetic transactions which can be recorded or generated to simulate user interaction. She is performing use case testing to confirm that the web application reacts appropriately to typical user scenarios. Actual data and dynamic monitoring are not widely recognized terms in this context. Fuzzing, unlike use case testing, involves sending random or unexpected inputs to check for vulnerabilities, while passive monitoring refers to capturing real traffic for analysis without active intervention. Question number 40. Which message logging standard is widely adopted by network devices, Linux, Unix systems, and various enterprise devices? Option A, sys event log. Option B, syslog. Option C, remote log protocol, that is RLP. And option D, netlog. And the correct option is option B, syslog. So the syslog protocol is extensively utilized for event and message logging across network devices, Linux system, Unix system, and various enterprise devices. Terms like event log, netlog, and remote log protocol do not represent established standards in this context. Question number 41. MO aims to forecast high-risk areas for her organization and intends to use metrics to evaluate risk trends as they develop. What should she do to address this? Option A, hire a penetration testing company to regularly test organizational security. Option B, perform yearly risk assessments. Option C, monitor logs and events using a SIEM device. And option D, identify and track key risk indicators. And the correct option is option D, identify and track key risk indicators. Key risk indicators are essential for informing risk management personnel about the risk levels associated with various activities and how changes influence the overall risk profile. By identifying and monitoring these indicators, organizations can pinpoint high-risk areas early in their development. While conducting yearly risk assessments is beneficial, it offers only a snapshot of the situation at a single point in time. Engaging a penetration testing firm might reveal vulnerabilities but may overlook risks that are not explicitly tied to security. Additionally, utilizing a SIEM device to monitor logs and events aids in detecting immediate issues, but it does not inherently track trends in risk over time. Question number 42. In what aspect of application threat modeling is STRIDE, which represents spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, and elevation of privilege, useful? And the options are option A, vulnerability assessment, option B, misuse case testing, option C, threat categorization, and option D, penetration test planning. And the correct option is threat categorization. So STRIDE is used for threat categorization. An essential aspect of application threat modeling is threat categorization. This process aids in evaluating the goals of potential attackers, which in turn informs the necessary security controls that should be implemented. The other options pertain to subjects that do not directly relate to application threat modeling. Question number 43. During a network port scan, Alex discovers several hosts responding on TCP ports 80, 443, 515, and 9100 across his organization's offices. What type of device is he most likely encountering? Option A, file servers. Option B, wireless access points. Option C, web servers. And option D, printers. And the correct option is printers. So these ports, the port number 8443, specifically the port 515 and 9100 are used by printers. Network-enabled printers commonly use TCP ports 515 and 9100 for services and have secure and non-secure web management interfaces on TCP port 80 and 443. In contrast, web server, access points, and file server typically do not utilize LPR and LPD ports, that is 515 and 9100 for their services. Question 44. During his analysis of the same reporting issue, David suspects that inconsistent timestamps on log entries from various systems may be causing the problem. Which protocol can he implement to address these issues? We are talking about inconsistent timestamp log entries. And the options are option A, FTP, option B, NTP, option C, SSH, and option D, TLS. So the issue is related to time syncing. So the correct answer is the NTP or the network time protocol. The network time protocol enables the synchronization of system clocks to a standard time source, which helps in resolving timestamp inconsistencies. Secure Shell, that is SSH, offers encrypted connection for server management, while File Transfer Protocol (FTP) is utilized for transferring data. Transport Layer Security (TLS) serves to encrypt information as it travels across a network. Question 45. Susan is planning to perform a standard-based audit for her organization. Which of the following option is typically utilized to outline standard requirements for information systems? Option A, IEC, option B, COBIT, option C, FISA, and option D, DMCA. And the correct option is option B, COBIT. So COBIT, the Control Objective for Information and Related Technologies, is commonly used as an audit framework for organizations. The DMCA is the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. IEC is the International Electrotechnical Consortium and defines standards for electrotechnology. And FISA is the Federal Intelligence Surveillance Act, not an audit standard. Question number 46. James is assisting his organization in determining audit standards for their international operation. Which of the following is not an IT standard that James' organization is likely to incorporate into audits? So we are talking about audit standards, and the options are option A, COBIT, option B, SASAE-18, option C, ITIL, and option D, ISO 27001. So which one is not an audit standard? ITIL. So the ITIL, which stands for IT Infrastructure Library, consists of practices focused on IT service management and is not usually employed for auditing purposes. In contrast, COBIT, Control Objectives for Information and Related Technologies, ISO 27001, and SSAE-18, Statement on Standards for Attestation Engagement number 18, are all relevant standards used in auditing. Question number 47. If HANA's main focus is on preventing eavesdropping attacks, which port should she block? And the options are option A, port 22, option B, port 80, option C, 443, and option D, 1433. So the port 22 is basically for SSH, which is this port is mainly used for management of servers and network devices, and the traffic is basically encrypted. The traffic on 443 is basically the HTTPS. It is also encrypted web traffic, while the traffic on port 80 is basically HTTP unencrypted traffic. So to prevent eavesdropping, this port should be blocked so that attackers cannot intercept this unencrypted traffic. Port number 1433, I have no idea about this port, that what service runs on this port. Let's see the explanation. So the correct answer is that the port 80 should be blocked. So port 80 is used by HTTP protocol for unencrypted web communications. If Hannah wants to protect against eavesdropping, she should block this port and restrict web access to encrypted traffic connection on port 443. Question number 48. During a port scan, which tool is best for examining the service like running on TCP port 443, which Naomi found open on a system? So port 443 is again the HTTPS port. And the options are option A, ZZUF, option B, Nikto, option C, Metasploit, and option D, SQL map. And the correct option is option B, Nikto. So what is Nikto? So TCP port 443 typically signifies an HTTPS server. Among the options listed, Nikto is the most suitable tool for scanning web servers and applications for vulnerabilities. While Metasploit offers some scanning capabilities, it is not specifically designed for vulnerability scanning. ZZUF is a fuzzing tool which is not applicable for vulnerability assessment, and SQL Map focuses on testing for SQL injection vulnerabilities. Question number 49. James has been hired to carry out a penetration test at the main branch of a bank. He has been provided only name and address of the bank to make the test more authentic. What kind of penetration test is James conducting? Option A, crystal box penetration test. Option B, a gray box penetration test. Option C, a black box penetration test. And option D, a white box penetration test. And the correct option is option C, a black box penetration test. Since James has not been provided enough information, this kind of test is a black box testing. And if the penetration test is provided most of the information, such as information available to an internal user, then this kind of information is a white box penetration test. While in gray box, limited information is made available. It is between the black box and the white box. Crystal box penetration test, you can say that it is similar to white box penetration test. So James has committed to a black box penetration test which involves no prior knowledge about the organization's system, defenses, or internal workings. In contrast, a white box or crystal box penetration test grants full information to the tester, while a gray box penetration test offers partial information. Question number 50. During a wireless network penetration test, what could hinder Susan's password cracking attempts when using AirCrack-NG with a password file? And options are option A, using web encryption. Web is basically wired equivalence privacy. It is a legacy and old Wi-Fi protection standard. Option B, running WPA2 in enterprise mode. Option C, using WPA2 encryption, and option D, running WPA2 in PSK mode. And the correct option is option B, running WPA2 in enterprise mode. So using WPA2 in enterprise mode may hinder Susan's password cracking efforts because it relies on radius authentication for users instead of a pre-shared key. This setup makes password attacks more challenging as repeated attempts could lead to account lockouts. While WPA2 encryption itself does not prevent password attacks, the pre-shared key mode of WPA2 is specifically designed to be vulnerable to such attacks. In contrast, WEP encryption, although outdated, can often be cracked quickly using tools like AirCrackNG. And that's all for this video. So please like and subscribe for the next upcoming videos on the CISSP certification exam. Thank you and see you in the next video.